So I'm joined by Congressman Michael Burgess, a Republican from Texas, former OBGYN, one of the most senior medical doctors in all of Congress. I don't want to take your license away from you. Maybe you're still an OBGYN, but in any case, somebody who understands the health care system. And let me talk about the politics first, if I can, Congressman, because in recent days, several Republicans have told me what we heard from Speaker Ryan today. They said, and I'm talking about Republicans here, they said, look, we did our jobs, we passed a bill, now it's up to the Senate. So I wonder what your thoughts are as you witness, first of all, the changing positions of the president and the struggle on the Senate side.
Well, there is a struggle on the Senate side, and I think that's been pretty evident. It was a struggle on the House side. The House did, committee that I sit on, the Energy and Commerce Committee, we went through a 28-hour markup. You may remember it last March. The Rules Committee that I'm also on had an 18-hour ordeal with bringing this thing to the House floor. We then did several iterations where there were additional amendments that were offered. The bill was pulled from the floor one afternoon and then came back to us. So I feel their pain over on the Senate side, but I also know this, Chris, they have to vote. They have to be recorded. This is not one of those things where you can just issue a press release and say we tried, we weren't successful. Everyone needs to know where everyone is on this. And
would you say, Congressman, that the leader of your party needs to lead more? I mean, he has taken just about every position at one time or another. Full repeal. Now he's saying repeal and replace. Just yesterday, I think it was hard to keep track with things moving so fast. You know, yeah, just let it fail and the Democrats will have to come to the table. I mean, is he hurting more than he's helping?
This is the Article 1, Article 2 stuff. It's our job to legislate, and then runs the executive branch. So it was up to us. It was up to us to get legislation to the president's desk. We got it through the House side. I don't know when Senator McConnell brings up a motion to proceed. My understanding is it will be the House bill that he calls up, and then you're quite right. The interview that you just did prior to me, there is an open amendment process under Senate rules where any number of things can be considered. So none of us, anyone who says that I know what this thing is going to look like at the end of the process, is that you just can't. It is going to be an uncertain process on the Senate side, but that's okay. That's what they're supposed to do. But at the end of the day, if they don't vote to proceed with hearing the bill on the floor, I just cannot imagine that is an acceptable alternative for the 50 senators.
Will they have failed their voters if they don't bring this to a vote?
That's pretty strong language, but this needs to come to a vote.
Well, they made a promise, so if they break it. Okay, so you said recently that you think we were better off before Obamacare, yet you know what the CBO reported, that if it was repealed, 32 million more people would be uninsured, $137 billion would be added to the deficit, premiums would double in 10 years, and only 12% of voters, Congressman, in a recent poll support the Senate plan. Have Republican proposals just gone too far?
No, and here's the part of the story that you're missing on that. Number one, if there were a full repeal done, the Congressional Budget Office cannot know then what happens over the next 2 years. And the repeal that was passed in the House and the Senate in December of 2015 had the Medicaid expansion that's
keeping a lot of the more
years.
Moderate Republicans is they believe that if there's a full repeal, millions of Americans will lose their health care.
Well, but that's just not true, and something does happen. The interim. It's not like you just repeal and then stand back. There would be work that would be ongoing. And this is, you know, when people say, well, I long for bipartisanship, there's your bipartisanship. There's your ability to come to the table and work together. This is not impossible.
I mean, I'm being realistic here. If you're a citizen, if you're not in Congress, and you've watched how this has been the least productive Congress for at least the last 2 or 3 years, legislation has been stalled, promises have not been kept. If you're a citizen, would you want to sit back and trust that there's suddenly going to be bipartisanship and you guys are going to figure this out?
Well, first of all, it's just not true that this Congress has been productive, and certainly we could go through the record on that.
When you look at the number of major pieces of legislation passed, it has been.
to understand, particularly when they look at that Congressional Budget Office report. I mean, what the Congressional Budget Office is telling us is that if people were not forced to buy a policy that they did not want and could not afford, then they wouldn't buy it. And that you would have people that would drop out of the process. That's the incumbent part upon us. We need to create an environment where there are products that people want and people will buy and that people can afford. That's the challenge.
I think that everyone can agree with that. Republican Congressman Michael Burgess of Texas, thanks so much.